Right, I am delighted to be here with James Cooke. James, a pleasure.
Great
and
to see you again,
author of
Rasheed.
Operations Management. But you've got just an extraordinary story. We met at an event, a talk I think I was giving a while ago, at which I think you'd been the previous speaker. And you've got an extraordinary background. You worked in the Met for many, many years, including on very high-profile initiatives. You now work as a coach, you're a speaker, you're author of this particular book. But I think one of the things that really struck me when I was keen to interview you is that somehow there's something very, you care about people. I'm not saying that lots of people in all sorts of fields don't, but you seem to have a passion about life, and you've managed to combine this work around operations, management, security, but with a real heart. Have people said that to you a lot? I want to start off by asking that. Do people often comment about that?
I think whilst I was working at Scotland Yard, people were very forensic about those sort of things, and they were always looking for the result rather than the way that you've done something.
Right.
But for me, it was a critical consideration, because I realised over the years that if you can't galvanise people into action through strong empathy for what they're dealing with and their own issues and problems and skills, strengths, weaknesses, you will not get the job done.
Right, and this is fascinating, and I'm so glad that you kind of hit us with this from the beginning, because often empathy and being compassionate and kind and people friendly is seen as it's a nice add-on, but actually sometimes there's not time for it, or it's far more about getting the job done. And you're making the point that actually, unless there's that empathy, unless there's that compassion, unless one's able to get, you're not going to be able to get the job done.
You've got to, because if you don't manage in that way, your staff will very quickly go sick. You will have conflict in the team, and all those negative aspects of teamwork will come to the fore. And as a manager and a leader of the team, you've got to be very mindful what makes people tick and how to motivate them into action.
Right, and I think that's a really good segue. I mean, tell us just in a snapshot about yourself and your career and so on, because some of the things that you're saying, I think anybody who manages and so on might say, okay, I kind of understand that, but you've been doing these things in very, very high risk often scenarios. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Of course, yeah. I mean, I joined when I was 16. I remember it well, the Met.
Yeah.
This is the Met Police, and I came in from the Shires, from Herefordshire, very sheltered childhood, and I came to Paddington Green, and my very first day as an 18-year-old, when I came out of the cadets and joined the regular force, was on Edgware Road. And I was just aghast. I was standing there as an 18-year-old in the middle of Edgware Road in full uniform, being expected to deal with people, and I felt extremely self-conscious and vulnerable, and wondering how on earth do I project myself as a manager on the street to people a lot older than myself.
Right, so this is extraordinary. Because I hadn't really thought much about that from when you're a police officer straight away. You're engaging with people, you're managing.
Yes.
So these people skills are very important. You see, this is one of the things I think is fascinating about speaking to you. You draw out the importance of people skills wherever one is. Now, I'm curious to know, did you always know that the police was a career that you wanted to do? Because to start going into police at 18, very young.
Definitely not. I mean, I was, I have to say, my brother-in-law was a very good mentor, and he was in the police already. And I was intrigued, and I thought it would be quite an adventure for a young guy to go into policing. I think the novelty of that wore off quite quickly after a few years, and dealing with some of the dreadful human tragedies you have to day in, day out, and some of the minutiae that you deal with as a policeman.
And when you're dealing with those things, were there some of those serious scenarios from quite early on? I mean, what kind of things? Just paint a picture.
Well, the first dreadful situation I had to go into was the Regent's Park bombing in 1982, July 82, and by then I
This wasn't the bandstand.
This was the bandstand
Right.
incident where 25 green jacket bandsmen were blown up by a bomb that had been set a month before they were playing, and they were literally blown to smithereens.
And
we were one of the first on the
scene?
scene, and you were literally holding men's hands whilst they died, literally blown in half, and dealing with body parts that have been blown up into the trees in Regent's Park, which is a park I love. I go back there now because it has such a striking impact on me in terms of the good things and the bad things in life.
And how old were you at the time?
I was 18. I was just coming up for 24.
And were you a Bobby on the beat who had been nearby, or were you working on special, or had you been called in as a special?
I was working on contingency planning at Paddington, and I was completing all the major incident contingency plans for the Chief Superintendent then, and I was a specialty. That was my specialty area, was dealing with major incidents and looking at the logistics of how we would respond, command and control, liaison with key agencies like the embassies and the diplomatic protection group. And so that was my first firestorm that I had to deal with in Regent's Park, of actually putting this theory to practice with real
something like contingency planning, strategic, all of this kind of stuff there, that there's so much theory and planning and thingy there, and then you're highlighting that actually at the same time you've got real people, real issues, heartache, emotional stuff that's going on with these kind of things. Did that underscore for you? I'm wondering, because you see the sense I get from you, and it comes across very strongly every time I meet you, is that there's this rich understanding of operational stuff, but this rich understanding and empathy for people. Did the experiences that you've been through, did they enrich something that you think was latent there in you, this assurance?
It's about listening to yourself, actually coming to terms with yourself, who you really are, your strengths and your weaknesses, and how to amplify the first and control the second. And if you're not at peace with yourself, you cannot deal with these life and death situations effectively. For me as a young man, I was like a journeyman. I was beginning to understand that it wasn't about me, these situations, it was about other people, and actually forgetting about myself, and actually dealing with the here and now in the most effective way possible, with as much compassion as possible. And if you don't do that with compassion, you shouldn't be in policing, and secondly, you're not going to get the job done properly. And that's something I've learned throughout my career. And those signals have got stronger as I've grown in experience and maturity.
And tell us a little bit about then the progression in your career, because I think one of the things that therefore strikes me is that pretty early on, this specialist field that you've worked in for much of your career, and I know that now you're a coach and so on, but still, I think a lot of the time people call to you for your expertise around operations and around security matters and all sorts of things. Tell me a little bit about how your career unfolded and how that specialism developed over how many years it was that you were in the
Well, it was 33 years in total, and the first half was very much concentrated on uniform operations work, covert issues. And the second part of my career, I concentrated on proactive policing, how to actually reduce crime in the first place, very much getting back to the Sir Robert Peel principles of prevention as the primary objective of policing. So I became a specialist in that area of risk management, physical crime reduction around buildings, people, that as a specialty area.
I'm going to pause that there because it's a beautiful moment as this car comes past, but because you're saying so many things, I want to come back and pick up on some of these issues with you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.